Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to part one of this series that I'm going to do, where I tell you how I'm going to rewrite episode 7. It's just me sharing my ideas on what I think the story could be. So, this is me presenting my idea. This will be completely audio-based to listen to. Well, it's primarily, I shouldn't say completely, but primarily going to be listening, not really much to see. I'll try to put up visuals for you guys to look at. If that's not your thing, I totally understand that. Now, my motivation for putting this out there is for multiple reasons. The first being is because I felt let down by the Disney sequel trilogy as a whole, and I wanted to share my ideas with everyone if I was the lead writer in the seat. Second is that I want to excel at writing stories, and I think it would be a good way to get constructive feedback on my choices, decisions, and overall decision-making, respect of what comes before, or the rules that are established within a universe. Those are my two leading reasons for wanting to do this, but also, if you're watching this, I encourage you to critique my writing and offer up advice or share your perspectives on what you think about it. I want to spark a constructive conversation. So, with that being said, I should establish a few rules for myself and what I'll be using as a basis for how the universe operates. I think it's important to establish what is canon and what is not first. Therefore, I want to establish that the first 6 films are canon. I know. Biggest shocking decision since Vader being revealed as Luke's father. Secondly, the Rebel show Mandalorian, the sequels made by Disney, their books, their comics, etc. will not be canon. Woohoo for everybody that doesn't like Disney and what they've done with the product. What I will honor, though, as canon is the ancient history like the Mandalorian Wars, the Hyperspace Wars, and I will also have the Clone Wars 2008 show as canon. With that being said, I'll be writing my own story in the sequels, or at least this film, so I have to burn down the system and say that nothing after Return of the Jedi is canon. Even in Legends. Even all the Legends books. Hear me out before you burn me at the stake, because I know that you're priming the pitchforks. I want to take pieces of what those writers made and help piece them into a story. It's just to help me chart a new territory, but I also want to use those stories as an inspiration. With that in mind, I next have to make things clear on what happens after Return of the Jedi for people. I don't know what I'd say specifically in the opening title crawl of Episode 7, but I'd have a concept. First, the New Republic is established after the New Republic is established after the death of the Emperor and Vader. Leia, Akbar, and others become key voices in this established government, and they built it on Coruscant. I'll establish that Han works in this New Republic as a commander. Leia and Han get married and have 3 children. 2 twins named Jaina and Jason, born in 7 ABY. For those who want me to do that timetable, it is after the Battle of Yavin, which was Episode 4. So I'll be using that for everybody. But if you don't like using that, that's 3 years after the 6th film. And so Jason and Jaina Solo were born at the same time, obviously. Along with their younger brother, Anakin Solo, born in 12 ABY. In the meantime, Luke went off to Yavin and established the Jedi Order after 5 years. After 5 years from Episode 6. So that means 9 ABY. Meanwhile, the remnants of the Empire become territorial, fighting in the Outer Rim and holding down only smaller territories, but still known and around, exist. People within the New Republic begin calling them the Remnants, no longer the Empire, so they shift the name. The Remnants of the Empire. Whoa, I know. I'm such a creative genius. As far as their armor, I wasn't sure on if they should keep the designs from the original 3 films or update it like Disney did. I did like the artwork by MOH Z Art. Full, I kid you, I spelled out the first 4 letters. It's all one word. With this photo right here of the stormtroopers they came up with. I did like that, but I'm leaving it up to you as the fans on what the design will look like exactly. Their leader was not well known or has not been established within the context of, well, nobody knows. They keep it secret until events pick up around 20 years after Return of the Jedi or 24 ABY for those who want me to keep track of the years. So this is 20 years exactly after the 6th film. One more quick note before I get into this video. For everybody and for those diehard fans, I'm using 2 sources when it comes to maps and planets. I'm using the swgalaxymap.com map, as well as the Star Wars Ultimate Visual Guide Special Edition by Ryder Windham. Windham? I feel like that's disrespectful. If I butchered that, I apologize. The book indicates that it was published in 2007, but I just wanted to list out the sources I'm using for the maps when it comes to this movie. Anyways, after all the setup, we arrive at the story of Episode 7. Roll it. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how to be copyrighted on YouTube. All jokes aside, I'll start getting into the video. After the opening text crawl, like the previous 6 films, we pan into a look of empty space, gleaming stars. But then the camera slowly moves downward to reveal a familiar orange planet known as Yavin, with a moon in front of it, which is Yavin 4. We won't say that, but I'm just telling you as the audience listening, so you know. All of a sudden, we hear a sound of a ship coming right out of hyperspeed, and then a Star Destroyer roars right over our heads. I wanted to do a quick nod to Episode 4, as it's my favorite Star Wars movie. I also like the idea of us using a familiar setting of where our heroes ended their journey in the first film back in 1977, only to have the villain show up. It's familiar for the casual audience. After that view, it cuts to the Remnants bridge, where Captain is giving orders on their attack. He turns to the holographic room and ensures that everybody leaves the room. Once the doors are shut, a hologram of Grand Admiral Thrawn appears. The captain proceeds to inform Thrawn that the Revedon, the ship that they are on, just came out of hyperspeed and is rapidly approaching Yavin 4. Thrawn urges him to start the orbital bombardment and then wait for further instructions. However, he emphasizes that this bombardment is reserved in firepower and does not completely decimate the Jedi Temple. The captain then questions the logic on why they are making such a bold, swift tactic on the Jedi, when it would only rile up the New Republic to retaliate. He also questions the decision to not just bomb the base from orbit, but at the same time, he questions whether the information Thrawn received was accurate about Skywalker being off-world at this time. Thrawn counters his questioning with an emphasis on executing the ground invasion flawlessly, and his instructions, rather than questioning the plan. The transmission cuts off, and we go to black. We cut out of that black, now if you imagine this, by zooming out to show the helmet of Captain Rex in a glass case with an older Ahsoka Tano staring at it. For anybody who's not aware, Captain Rex was Anakin's captain during the Clone Wars, and Ahsoka was his Padawan. I'm just informing you as the audience who's listening. If you're a casual audience, it's just something to know. Remember, I made that canon, so. Recalling the memories that she and her old friend had on the battlefield as she looked at that helmet, she's interrupted by her Padawan Anakin Solo running up to her and asking why she wanted to see him. He was only 12 years old and recently taken in as her apprentice, and she proceeds to ask him if he's ever heard of her talk about his grandfather. She proceeds to share stories on how he was a great warrior and a wonderful friend to her in the Republic's time of need and during the Clone Wars. And she's glad to see that Anakin Solo's uncle had built something that she saw as an improvement on what the Jedi were before. Separated from the issues of politics and the influence of other entities, allowing the Jedi to focus on the will of the Force. Anakin drank all of that in, and asked if knowing his grandfather was the reason why she was on the council in the first place, in this new order. Ahsoka informed him that Grandmaster Luke has his own reasons, and that would be a question for him when he returns from Kashyyyk. They walk outside, and Anakin asks if they can spar, so he can improve his skills. She, of course, informs them that he should remember that a Jedi's lightsaber is a tool, not a weapon. It should only be used in defense, not to attack. Of course, being young, he of course pouts for a bit, and asks what kind of stance his grandfather had. So, she reluctantly caved, and she started explaining it to him, until she felt a disturbance in the Force. She looked up into the sky to see a Star Destroyer far up into the atmosphere, so much so that it was a hazy gray triangle, and told Anakin to alert anyone around them to flee into the Forest and the surroundings. They were caught off guard. How could she have not sensed it sooner? She raced into the temple and found some of the other members of the council and informed them of the cruiser. Just then an explosion rocked the temple as an orbital bombardment began. Ahsoka raced through the halls, telling other Jedi to escape and flee into the underground tunnels below, where it could, it's an escape route in case of a siege. She ran into Jaina Solo, who asked where Anakin was. Ahsoka said that she's going to go get him, and Jaina volunteered to help direct others to the tunnels. Ahsoka raced through the halls, and unfortunately, a huge chunk of the ceiling came down on her from the force of another explosion and burying her, knocking her out. Yes, I know, some of you would say, how could she not have sensed that with the Force? These are things you can critique. Feel free. It cuts back to the captain of the Revedon, who continued the bombardment until two other Star Destroyers came out of hyperspace, next to them. Well, not next to them, but near them, and rapidly approached. He received a transmission from Thrawn again, and he cleared the room. Thrawn ordered a ground assault of troops from the Revedon, while the other two cruisers were there for support, in case ships came out of hyperspeed in response. The captain gave the order, and we switch over to the landing crafts, leaving underneath the bottom of the ship and touching down on Yavin 4. It then turns to his first-person perspective, through the eyes of one of the soldiers charging out of the landing craft and racing toward the ruined and broken temple. Debris was scattered everywhere, and a few lightsabers were clashing against troops as Jedi fended themselves. The soldier ran with his squad into the temple through the many twists and turns of the place. As a quick note, the squad is made up of 6 soldiers. These 6 soldiers came upon 2 young Padawans who snuck up on them. In a flash, the soldier we viewed through cried out in alarm and surprise and fell backwards. He looked up in time to see one of his squad mates get stabbed, another one gets cut in half, and another loses their arm, before he and the other 2 remaining kill the Jedi. He scrambles to his feet and tries to use supplies to tend to the one who lost his arm. But the squad leader, who is still alive, and was one of the other two unharmed, says they are wasting time. Our character, who we're viewing through, argues that Moxley is still alive, the person he's attending to, and pulls out a small injector to give him an adrenaline boost. The squad leader shoots Moxley in the head instead, and our character gets enraged by this and pushes his squad leader, informing him that he didn't need to die. That he could have still been saved. The third member of the group the third member of the survivors steps between both of them before things escalate and says that there's nothing they can do now, considering that, well, the three of them are dead. They might as well keep going. The squad leader reminds them that they are just numbers and digits, FN, referring to our character. Our character, FN, responds by saying, I didn't sign up to be just a number. We are all people. He could have been saved. The third person, female, tries to de-escalate the situation when our squad leader threatens our character, FN, with the possibility of getting in the way of our mission. Just then, the three soldiers hear a cry for help, a young boy. The three soldiers follow the sound and see that a hallway has half caved in, and a young kid Padawan, a young boy, Padawan, was in there, half buried with his legs pinned down. Tears on his face and his quick and rapid breathing appeared to show that he was fearful. His legs were pinned, I already said that, and his lightsaber had rolled away from him. He sees the three soldiers and tries to reach out for his lightsaber in desperation. The squad leader picked it up, off the ground, and proceeded to taunt the kid, saying how the Jedi were sinners who had been purged for their sins of the past, and needed to be again. The kid struggled harder against the rocks and tried to lift them with the Force, but he couldn't calm his mind, and the squad leader ignited the blue blade. Our character, named FN, looked at the third soldier, the female, who just watched as well in silence, looking back and forth between them, unsure of what to do. Just as the squad leader raised the blade to deliver a killing blow, our character shot him in the back. The squad leader staggered with a hole in his chest, dropping the lightsaber and his rifle, and turning around, clutching at his chest. He sank to his knees and fell on his side. The lightsaber switched off as it hit the ground. We finally left that first-person perspective, and FN took off his helmet and dropped his gun. Of course, I was imagining John Boyega still being the character. He was breathing hard and sank to his knees as the other soldier, the female, ran to the squad leader. FN apologized over and over under his breath as the other soldier, the female, removed her helmet and looked back at him in shock. She demanded an answer, and he told her that he didn't sign up to slaughter kids. This isn't what he wanted. This isn't what he wanted to do. He wanted a greater purpose, but not this. She sat in silence for a few seconds with him before walking to him and helping him to his feet. He asked if she was going to report it, and she shook her head and slipped her helmet back on. She said they should leave the kid, and he refused to do that. He couldn't see the kid like that. It reminded him too much of himself, but that's something I might go into later. He went back over to the kid and urged the Padawan to relax. FN tried to pull away some of the rubble, and then someone used the Force to lift a few of the larger rocks, holding the kid down. The two soldiers turned around to see Jaina Solo. She eyed them carefully, as FN asked if the kid could walk. The kid could not as he struggled to his feet, so FN decided to carry him in his arms after he failed, and walked up to Jaina, and said that he could carry the kid. She eyed him carefully and said that she doesn't trust him. He responded and said that he's not letting a child die like this in a horrible situation. She said that she'd accompany them just in case he was lying and could be a guide, as well as being a way to keep an eye on him in case he was going to betray or go back on his word effectively. They turned to the female soldier, who informed him that if he did this, he'd be labeled a traitor and a deserter. He asked if she would let him go, and she said yes, because he'd fought by her side for so long and helped her when she needed him. However, she would unfortunately have to report him as MIA, missing in action, as her squad was completely wiped out around her. He thanked her for her help, and then he carried the kid in his arms while Jaina grabbed his helmet and rifle. Well, he put his gun on his belt. It's not a rifle. Well, yes it is. It's just not a long, giant rifle. It's a shorter one for closer combat. He put that on his belt, and she took his helmet to prevent him from potentially using a transmission or being in contact with other soldiers. They made her... She also carried her lightsaber in her other hand, just in case if he tried anything. They made their way into the tunnels, and she sealed the doors shut behind them. Jaina then ignited her lightsaber and used it as a source of light. She ordered the soldier, FN, to walk in front of her, so that he doesn't pull any surprises, as he carried the Padawan, and also informed him that he won't be able to contact the Remnants, as they go deeper underground. So, I'll pause there for now to end part 1. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, what I could have changed, altered, or improved upon. I definitely wanted to change things up, okay? But I also wanted to fit in references and nods to characters, as well as create new ones. So as you can tell, a lot of these characters, if you never watched the movie, or if you only watched the 6 movies, these are all completely new characters, so to speak. If you've read the books, dived into the lore of Star Wars, or watched, for example, the Clone Wars, there would be more characters and references that you'd get, effectively. Like Thrawn, Ahsoka Tano, Captain Rex, Anakin, like the 3 children of the Solos, etc. Now, I decided that I would put my own spin on it, just like the concept of Finn. I like the Finn character in the sense that you could have somebody from the opposite side slowly turn, but I wanted to tweak it. It was going to be a soldier that was very much grounded in the infantry, and you could understand where he's coming from. Now, as far as why he did that, I didn't want to explain it in the first act. That seems kind of crazy. Now, you could critique why Jaina would trust him, etc., etc., etc. That's where you could start pulling it apart. But I wanted to establish that you could see the conflict in his eyes, and even seeing the different perspectives of the Remnants. These people aren't mindless. I also wanted to bring in Ahsoka because she could add an extra layer to the story, as well as give her character some official screen time after what happened in the Clone Wars. Of course, this would obviously spoil the ending of the Clone Wars show, but I think it would motivate people who potentially are casuals, or I should say casuals, but who only watched the films, to go watch the Clone Wars and enjoy it by seeing Captain Rex, Anakin, and learn more about it, and see the relationship unfold, see that domino effect. I also really thought doing a Force villain again, as the main villain, wasn't too exciting. It isn't the worst thing, but having Thrawn as a seat of power within the remnants of the Empire, I think would be super cool. Having a tactical genius against the Jedi and the Republic, I think that would be a cool, interesting, different thing that we've never seen before. In terms of just the overall, who's the big bad villain that we should look at. because you had Vader and the Emperor. I also wanted to bring in the solo kids from the books while also branching off and making my own stories, or my own idea by taking combinations and inspiration from these other stories that were told. My goal was to combine aspects of the novels and the shows to help add layers. So, what do you all think? I'd love to hear your thoughts on the stories so far and what you'd like to see in the future. Hope you all enjoyed the video. Leave a like and subscribe to the channel, of course, if you choose. And I'll see you all in part 2. Thank you so much.